In today's video, I want to give you my first take on the 2019 NHL Draft Prospects. I'm going to give you a rundown of who I think, as of right now at least, are the top 10 potential picks. We'll discuss all that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. As I mentioned off the top, today we're going to take our first look at the 2019 eligible draft prospects. Now last year for the 2018 draft, we had extensive coverage and we did a lot of player rankings as we led into the NHL draft. This year we're going to get started a little bit earlier, so obviously it's only December. There could be a fair bit change as these players kind of complete their season. Some of them are going to have a chance to showcase their talents at the upcoming World Junior Championships here in a couple of weeks. So there certainly could be some changes, and again, this is just my opinion. You take a look around the internet, there's certainly going to be a lot of other ranking systems. I might have some of these players ranked a little bit differently, but again, this is just my opinion. So let's jump in here, and we're going to give you the top 10 picks. We're going to start at number 10 and count our way up to number 1. At number 10, I've got Ryan Suzuki, a center iceman from the OHL's Barrie Colts. Now, he's the brother of Nick Suzuki, who was a Vegas Golden Knights draft pick, who was later traded to the Montreal Canadiens as a part of that Max Pacioretty trade. Now, of course, like his brother, he's not an overly huge player. He's about 5'11", a little on the slight build side, but still, he's an incredibly creative hockey player. Now, Ryan Suzuki is certainly a great skater who certainly has a terrific vision. That vision allows him to be one of the most creative players available in this draft, outside of Jack Hughes, who we'll jump into a little bit later in this video. He might just be the second most creative player in this draft. I mean, there's a lot of other players that we obviously have ranked ahead of him, but when it comes to creativity, Ryan Suzuki is certainly near the top of the list. His puck handling skills are absolutely tremendous, and his ability to stop on a dime, change directions or spin to get away from defenders is incredible. That also allows him to do a lot of great offensive zone entries as well. Now the one knock on Suzuki, I do find watching his highlights, he kind of sticks to the outside a little bit too much. He certainly needs to bring his game a little bit in tighter and take it to the net a little bit more, but I think that will come to as he hopefully gets a little bit bigger and fills out that frame of his. A little bit more size would probably make him feel a little bit more comfortable with that, and he also needs to shoot more as well. His shot isn't too bad, something he's working on. But again, a very creative player who has a lot of NHL upside, and we'll see where he can go in this draft. But right now, I have him ranked at number 10. Next up at number 9, we got Raphael Lavoie of the Halifax Mooseheads. Now, he's a pretty good size guy. He's about 6'4", over 200 pounds. Can play center and wing, which makes him a little bit more of a versatile forward here. He's one of the older players in this draft as well. He does have an early birthday. I think it's safe to say his ability between passing, shooting, scoring, setting up plays, etc. pretty much 50-50. Like, he can be a pretty good playmaker, but he can also have that ability to finish and put the puck in the net as well. Now, Lavoie seems to be the type of player who you could say is a pretty safe pick. He does all the little things right. He's a pretty smart player, good hockey sense. He can certainly be a power forward type of guy as well. Given that size, he's not afraid to use it and take that puck to the net as well. Pretty good passes in tight or trying to drive in and score. So I do think Lavoie likely will be a top 10 pick come season's end when we get to the draft. I do see him as a pretty safe pick who certainly has really high odds of making it in the NHL and likely being a solid second line player. At number 8, I've got Matthew Boldy, who's a winger from the U.S. National Team Development Program, who's played a lot with Jack Hughes. And I know I've seen some reports and some scouts say that the reason his stats are so good is because he's had a chance to play with one of the best players of his age group in the world in Jack Hughes. But I don't agree with that at all. I do think Boldy's a pretty terrific player, and we've seen times when Jack Hughes has had a chance to move up and play in other levels here, that Boldy has still performed well playing with other centers. Now, he's also pretty versatile. He can play on either side of the ice, so he can play right wing or left wing as well, so that certainly gives him an edge around some of the other players in this draft. He's a pretty solid playmaking winger as well, but he certainly has the ability to finish. He has a terrific shot. I think amongst all the U.S. national team players, I think he's right up there, one of the number 1 or 2 players when it comes to his shot and shooting ability. So again, he's a pretty crafty playmaking winger who can shoot the puck as well. So I think Boldy here has a lot of higher end potential as well, and when he makes it to the NHL, he has a top 6 forward written all over him, and if he can play with a guy like a Jack Hughes or another playmaking center, that's certainly going to create his ability to really produce and show his skills at the NHL level once he arrives. Next up at number 7, we got Bowen Byram, defenseman from the Vancouver Giants of the WHL. Now you're going to notice a trend here. There's going to be a lot of guys from the WHL as well as the U.S. National Team Development Program. The WHL is probably the strongest amongst all the Canadian leagues, at least for the higher end picks in this draft. Now, he's a pretty well-rounded defenseman, and you're also going to notice in this 2019 draft, too, that there's not as many defensemen. It's not a defense-heavy draft like we've seen in 2018. There was a lot of intriguing defensemen in that draft that you could certainly peg as being a potential top-pair guy, whereas this draft is certainly not a whole lot of that. There's some pretty solid-looking defensemen. They're just not going to have that wow factor and the potential to be a top pair. A lot of these guys are likely going to develop into second and third pair NHL defensemen, should they make that far in their development. But there's just not a lot of wow factor there with that ability to really jump out and be like a number one guy on an NHL team. You can describe Byram as a pretty well-rounded defenseman, has good gap control, excellent skating ability. Like, for example, if he gives the puck away or there's a turnover, he has great skating ability to be able to get back and try to recover, which he quite often can do. So that certainly bodes well for his defensive zone play. The offensive skills are coming along. He doesn't have a big booming shot or anything from the point. His shot is okay, but it's certainly something he needs to work on. Even though he doesn't have that big shot, he can still be a very effective offensive player because his passing skills are pretty solid. I could still see him getting some power play time. But in order for him to have that opportunity to be like a top 4 defenseman with more power play time and have more of that offensive ability, it's something that's going to continue to develop here. But he's a pretty well-rounded defenseman. There's a lot to like about his game. You're just not going to get the high-end offensive abilities like you often see with top 10 defensive picks here in the NHL draft of previous years. At number 6, we've got Peyton Krebs, who's another smaller size center iceman around 5'11" from the WHL's Kootenay Ice. Krebs was recently named captain of his junior team, and he's been putting up more than a point per game so far this year, putting up 35 points in his first 30 junior games. Now, Krebs has high hockey IQ, and he's a really hard-working player, plays with a lot of determination, leads by example, which is why he's been named captain, even at his age. Is something you don't often see until they're at least a year older, a lot of times with junior clubs. But he plays, like I said, with a lot of passion, determination, a hard-working guy, but he also has a lot of skills. Sometimes with those hard-working, determinate players, sometimes they're more fit for like a bottom 6 NHL role, but I don't see that with Peyton Krebs. I do think he has enough high-end skill to be more of in the top 6 forward category. Peyton Krebs is an exciting, fun player to watch. He has high-end puck skills, a pretty decent passer as well, and I do see him as being a top 6 potential here at the NHL level. Next up, we've got Kirby Dach, who's a 6'3" right shot center iceman from the WHL as well. So a right shot center is even something more coveted at the NHL level nowadays, and he certainly has a lot of great assets that NHL teams are absolutely going to love. Not only is he that big, strong right shot center, but he's got great puck handling abilities, and he's not afraid to put that size to good use as well, so we can certainly play sort of in a power forward type of role. Personally, I see him as having pretty good skating skills, but if you take a look around some of the scouting reports on him, there are some scouts that kind of knock his skating abilities a little bit. But personally, I don't see that as an issue, but certainly an area he could improve on a bit, but not nearly as much of a problem as some scouts make it out to be. This guy's got an incredibly high hockey sense, good hockey IQ, is a really smart player. He's really good with his puck handling skills, really good in tight as well. Even though he's a forward, he could certainly be that power play quarterback that you need, that instrumental piece on a power play at the NHL level. He can either play off the half wall or down by the goal line. Either position can work well for him, and his ability to set up plays and his passing abilities and that vision he has is certainly incredible and certainly propels him up here into the top 5 picks in my opinion. Next up at number 4, we got Vasily Podkolzin, who's a Russian player from the SKA St. Petersburg in the MHL, who's been a fast-rising player so far this year. And if you take a look back, a lot of the draft ranking systems on this player back, say, even in the fall before the season started or into the summertime, a lot of places had him ranked much lower. Now, he's been projected for a while to likely be a first-round pick in the 2019 draft, but really, even a couple months back, he probably would have been ranked somewhere between 15 and 20, and now a lot of places have him ranked much higher as he's had a terrific start to his 18-19 season. He plays a very fast, physical game, and he's certainly a natural goal scorer. Now, with that, there certainly are a few flaws and things that I'd like to see him work on to really solidify himself as a top 5 pick. I can see him being a player who's kind of risen up the rankings so far, but depending on how a few other things go, I could possibly see him dropping down and maybe being somewhere between 5 and 10, or maybe even into the high teens as well. I mean, he might remind you a little bit of Vitaly Kravtsov, who was like that surprise Russian player who moved up in the 2018 NHL draft. But even though he plays that strong, fast, physical game, great goal scorer. He needs to work on his passing a little bit. I find he's a little bit selfish at times, and his defensive play certainly leaves a lot to be desired as well, in my opinion. So we'll see. He's a player to keep your eye on now. He's one of the faster risers so far in the 2019 draft, but there's lots of time left. You likely won't get a chance to see it at the World Junior Championships for Team Russia. I do believe he's going to be playing in a Junior A World Championship tournament instead. So we'll have to keep an eye on this player, but he's certainly a guy who's fun to watch. If you take a look at his highlights, do a YouTube search here, punch his name in the search and find some highlights, you'll find he's a very entertaining player to watch. But in my opinion, there's a lot of dimensions to his game that need work. But he's one of those players that you might be willing to live with and, make up for those defensive mistakes based on how much offense he can provide. Now, next up at number 3, we have another center iceman, 6'3" from the WHL, Dylan Cozens. Given his size, I think he's a fantastic skater. Certainly something that could probably be worked on a little bit, but quite often the bigger, taller players, skating is something that takes a little bit longer to develop, and it's usually a skill that we kind of see picked on by a lot of these junior age players. When they're 6'3", 6'4", it's something that's a little bit more challenging for them to develop, but in my opinion, for given his size, I'd say he has above average skill. Now, he's also really solid on faceoffs and is really developing into being a really solid two-way forward, but sometimes when you hear two-way forward, that means there's not as much offense, but with this player, I don't think that really applies. He works really hard. He has the ability to chase down loose pucks and create something out of nothing. He can take over a game. His ability to really be a top player and grab a lot of your attention on the ice certainly stands present most of the time when he's playing. He's not afraid to put that big size of his to use, obviously battling for the puck down on the wall or in the corners. And certainly, like I said, he's got a pretty good shot, pretty good passing ability. He's a pretty well-rounded player. He does a lot of the little things right, which is really why he's projected him up so high on my list here today. But Cozens is certainly a player to keep your eye on. I mean, I do think he has top 5 potential for sure. I'd be surprised if he slips out of the top 5 by the time the draft comes around in June. But he's a very, very well-rounded player here that does a lot of little things well. But in my opinion, Cozens is probably one of the best well-rounded players in this draft class. Next up at number 2, we've got the big Finnish winger, 6'4", Kaapo Kakko, who's certainly had a lot of attention here over the last number of months as we really get into the 2019 NHL draft class. He's been playing over in Liiga, having a fantastic season so far. There was some doubts by some scouts, even as early as a few months back, saying, is he really the second best player in this draft? But really, if you have a chance to watch him play, I don't think there'll be any doubts at all that he definitely is deserving of the number 2 spot he's been sitting at for most of this time when we're talking with the 2019 draft class. One of the most impressive things about Kaapo Kakko is what he can do at high speed. He's a terrific puck handler, great stick handler, good shot. He can go to the forehand, the backhand, but at the speed he can do it is incredibly impressive. Now, for a big guy, I think he skates incredibly well. One of the better skaters in this draft. He's certainly a terrific skater, terrific edge work, terrific on breakaways and shootouts. If you want to find some highlights on him doing shootouts and breakaways, you'll be highly entertained for sure. I do think he reminds me a bit of a guy like Barkov of the Florida Panthers, who's this got an uncanny ability when he's in alone on the goaltenders. He quite often makes them look silly for sure. So Kakko certainly has that ability to be a game breaker for sure. Unlike some offensive players, I find he's incredibly patient as well. He's not going to shoot the puck on net in a bad situation and create turnovers just because he has an ability or an option to shoot. He's going to be patient and wait for that right play to develop so he can get that right quality shot on net or make a strong pass to one of his teammates as well. So when you combine his patience, his skating, his size, his skill, his ability to handle the puck at such a high speed and do wonderful things with it and make goaltenders look silly when he's in alone, it certainly explains why he's number 2 on a lot of people's list and has been for some time, and I don't see him moving out of this spot. He's a really terrifically fun player to watch. Now at number 1, to no surprise here, we've got Jack Hughes of the United States National Development Team program. Jack Hughes has been slotted at number 1 here for a really long period of time, and that likely is not going to change. I mean, I'll be completely shocked here if we get to the 2019 draft in Vancouver and any other name is called at number 1 besides Jack Hughes. Just watching Jack Hughes skate around the ice is entertainment in itself, really. Not even watching what he does with the puck, but he's a brilliant skater. His skating ability really allows him to create a lot of time and space for himself and really break away from defenders. The way he can anticipate the play and kind of see a couple plays ahead, his hockey sense is unreal. He's incredibly fast hands and he's an incredibly good passer, and he's got a pretty good shot to boot. I'd like to see him use it more, really, to be honest. I mean, Jack Hughes is certainly guilty of being a pass-first type of center iceman, but you know what? His shot is pretty good, and as over time here, he'll get to use that more and hopefully build more confidence with it. But there's a lot of reasons why when you watch this guy play, if you haven't had a chance to watch him or check out his highlights, you definitely want to do it. is a real treat to watch. It reminds you a lot of Patrick Kane. Obviously, Patrick Kane, another US-born player who went #1 overall. The reason why Jack Hughes draws a lot of comparisons to Chicago Blackhawks forward Patrick Kane. They're built similarly and they play similarly. It's quite a treat to watch, and if he turns out to be anything like Patrick Kane, then the lucky team picking #1 overall is certainly going to have a franchise player to build around. And of course, his older brother, Quinn Hughes, was drafted in the first round last year by the Vancouver Canucks, who's now playing in college hockey, but expected to sign and join Vancouver next year. Take a look around the NHL and take a look at the bottom of the standings and see which teams kind of stand the best chance right now to be drafting #1 come June at the 2019 NHL Draft. A few of them here are going to be very lucky teams, as some of these higher end players are certainly a real treat and could be franchise players that they build around for many years to come. Now, this draft is different in a lot of ways as well. Like I said, you're going to find it's very Western Canada heavy as well as a U.S. national team heavy, mixed in with some pretty high-end European players as well. Of course, this 2019 NHL draft is going to be a fair bit different than what you saw last year in 2018. It's certainly going to be very heavy at the center position, which was one of the weak points in last year's NHL draft. Last year, we saw really heavy on the defense and winger side of things, and this year's the exact opposite. As you can see here, my top 10, many of them are center ice mixed in with a few wingers, and I've only got one defenseman mixed in there. Now, there's certainly a few other defensemen who probably can make an argument to jump in possibly to the top 10, but in my opinion, the defense this year, they're solid. They're probably projected to be NHL, players, just not that high-end defenseman that you kind of want to build your team around. Leave a comment, let me know what you think of these players and which ones you're really hoping your favorite team has a chance to draft come the draft in June in Vancouver. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.